Hi, y'all. It's Brigitte Cutshall with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Bronson Hill. He's a managing member of Bronson Equity. He's also a podcast host and the author of Fire Yourself. Can you say hi, Bronson?
Hey, how's it going, Bridget? Excited to be here today and excited to talk with your audience. Yeah, and I'm sure have a great conversation.
Thank you. I'm glad that we connected. I love what you're doing. You're really helping people kind of my understanding reinvent themselves because we all have problems in life, and a lot of it, especially we talk about a lot is financially, right?
Yeah,
And that's something that scares people. They, I think part of it is we don't learn enough about it when we are in school, right?
yeah,
They don't talk about it enough.
sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. The education system, I think, really teaches us how to be great job seekers, right? How do we, so you have these graduates coming out. There's a lot of job seekers, not a lot of job creators. And really in our system today, it's become pretty complex to try to manage yourself financially, right? And if you just trust traditional wisdom or advice, maybe it'll go well. You'll work for the next, or you work till you're 65 and retire and hopefully have money there to be able to make it. But how are you going to make income off the money you have? There's just all kinds of questions that come up. So I've learned with financial education, it's really important. And when you talk to people that are very wealthy, they typically do things very differently than the middle
Right.
class, which I think is really fascinating.
Yes, it is. When I grew up, graduated high school in the early 80s, sorry, but we did have learn about how to even balance your checkbook. They don't even do that now. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People are just because they have credit cards and people are getting, I don't know, I should say in debt, but it's kind of scary. I having someone like you on to help educate people to understand the importance of this. And like you're right, we're expected just to go have a job. And I became an independent person long over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's just my personality, maybe. But I was like, oh my God, what are you doing, Bridget? But I wanted to be independent. I didn't want to be having to fit in a box.
Yeah.
I, I guess it's part of it is how your upbringing is, maybe.
Well, and again, too, yeah, it is your upbringing. We're really trained to, for most of us to be poor middle class. But there's something that I wrote my first book, Fire Yourself, which really is based on how do you start people that have money, how to start taking this money and let this money work for me while I sleep. So Warren Buffett has this quote of, unless you learn how to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. So it's the idea of like you go to work, you make money, but then as you save the money, your money then also goes to work and goes work for you and starts making money for you. So the piece of financial education is so important because most people never learn it. And then also the second thing I just wanted to share about how things are changing. I think right now, over the last 2 years, things are changing so dramatically because of AI and because of some of the implications there that there's going to be whole industries. For example, accountants, and I'm not saying if somebody's an accountant, I wish, wish us all the very best, but it could be in a year or two, they could say, we just kind of found a way to automate all this with taxes and accounting, whatever, and we don't really need accountants anymore, right? So what does somebody who's an accountant do? And this is where the education piece is so important to continue to educate yourself. And I do think things like owning assets, real estate, owning oil and gas, other natural minerals, other things like that. You can't just AI these away, or there's no way to.
Oh,
So if
right.
you can do that. And then also, it's so interesting. This is kind of a side note, but it used to be they really valued the STEM, right? The science, technology, math, all the sciences. Well, now AI can do this stuff better than humans can. And I think the things that are much more difficult to replace are the interpersonal human connection things, right? So if I have soft skills, I can go have conversations with people in real life and generate relationships and find ways to maybe sell products that I believe in that other people like as well. I think those things are very valuable. So but it is interesting. We're in a time of massive disruption. Most people don't realize what's happening, and it's happening very quickly. It's going to continue to happen very
Yeah.
quickly. I'm not quite sure where it's going to end up, but it's over the next 5, 10 years, everything from work to education, everything is going to be completely different, I think, over that period of time. So we're just kind of watching all this.
I think my perspective of maybe we could be more human, remember our humanity and to be more present. And as you were talking about the stage that we're in, it seems like every 50 to 100 years, we have lots of massive change. And the biggest one in the past was the Industrial Revolution. So this is more of what kind of revolution would you call this? I, you know,
I mean, it's been we've had the information revolution. This is more the I don't know, I just call it the AI revolution. It's
yeah,
basically
right.
the automation. Yeah,
And just think about it, just less than like 20 years ago, we were just getting our mobile phones. When I got in out of college, email was just invented. Okay, that was a big deal. And
Yeah.
now that's like, I should say,
Well,
yeah.
and it is interesting. Yeah, these things that are happening. The challenge too is we're getting now to think it's hard to tell what's real, right? So when you're online, there's deep fake videos. Now we're getting phone calls from people. There's ways they can mimic your voice, and I've heard of stories of somebody getting a distress call from their daughter who's screaming in the background, and somebody saying, "Hey, I've got your loved one at gunpoint. I'm going to kill them unless you pay this amount of money," and it was all fake because they had. If you have 3 seconds of someone's voice, you can basically clone the voice. Right. So it's I hear with scams. I had a relative, they got involved in a scam where they were, thought it was the IRS. So they paid some money to something. And it's just these stuff is getting harder to identify. It sounds silly, but like it's happening more and more. So the more digital we become, I think there's this desire to connect, interpersonally. And of course, shows like yours, which are great shows, ways people can connect, but also just, in real life, what are ways people can actually have networks where they actually know people, they actually can be more connected that way. And I think it takes effort these days. It takes really a lot of effort. It used to be you had to connect. You're just in a neighborhood, you're in an area, like people already kind of knew everybody. And now you can literally be somewhere and really not be known besides just, oh yeah, there's somebody who lives over there and then the neighbor. And it's a different world than we live in now, we live in now.
It is, and I see that too. A lot of they call it networking is coming back, but it's always been there, and but it is better idea, like you said, in person. And Zoom went crazy over after COVID.
Yeah.
I should say went crazy, but see, you and I are in different states, but we can talk to each other. But we're real. This is really Bridget and Bronson talking to each other, and I think that we need to make sure we're embracing our humanity, and then to when you have these major life shifts, like you're saying, I am, financial is I worry about a little bit for the younger generation for some reason. I do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally. It's well, and I have a daughter. My daughter's 12, and I try to educate her on what's happening in the world, and it is a different world. And I think that it kind of happens. I've noticed it as I get older. I'm 44, but as I get older, it's kind of there's this idea of wanting to go back to the way things were when we were kids, and some
Yeah.
I think is just normal, and everything is it's the same but it's different. But there are so many distractions now. It used to be, I think growing up, they said the average attention was 8 minutes or something. Now it's like 8 seconds or something. It's because of the swipe culture, right? Of just like looking on your Instagram reel and just kind of going through it. And so I do think, again, for just skills for people, and I know this is more geared to adults, but even kids, how do we teach people to focus on information that will be helpful over time? What is timeless? And that's where I've shifted from going to, I don't really watch TV much. I'll watch a show occasionally, but I don't watch the news. I don't watch a lot of
Right.
things that are kind of current stuff. I do a lot of books. I listen to a lot of books because books a lot of times will have timeless wisdom. And, in times of great change, I think it's important to have kind of a broader perspective to realize these things have happened before. We've had major technological periods before multiple times over history. And so they say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, right? So you can kind of gather lessons if you're somebody who's able to kind of take a step back and say, well, what's really happening from a larger perspective here? And what are some changes that could happen? And that's where I think from investing, it gets very interesting because in times of great change, there's great threats, but there's also incredible opportunities. And so if you're paying attention, there's a lot of ways to make a lot of money. It's just you've got to be kind of like really looking at things, taking a step back, kind of evaluating things, learning, being around different people that are doing different things, and you just be amazed things that will open up to you. And I've found ways to make a lot of money just by paying attention.
That's why I started this podcast because I'm learning from other people and I'm learning from authors, even though I'm older than you, but I'm still learning. We need to have different generations talk to each other. And your book, Fire Yourself, it's kind of, I shouldn't say see it as a legacy, but it's your path, really what you were doing before and why you got into my understanding, like investing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I was a little bit of my background. I was a well-paid medical sales professional. I was making over $200,000 a year. I was working 30, 40 hours a week. And I had, there's a lot of things I loved about it. I wore scrubs. I went into surgeries and helped doctors with their heart surgery. Did that for 10 years, just in different spaces in the medical field. But the thing I didn't have control over is I didn't have control over my time. And I think people will say, I want to have financial freedom, but really what we're saying is I want to have freedom of time. And so I've been able to build that. I left my corporate job about 4 years ago, was able to travel 6 times last year internationally, including the base camp I'm out at Mount Everest, went to India, I went to Portugal, went to Mexico a couple of times. Like just being able to create this life, it's like, oh, I can do the things that are important, spend time with the people that I want to, be able to create really that difference in the world that I want to see. And so for a lot of us, it's kind of a tragedy that about 70% of people would say they're not engaged at work, they don't like their job, right? And so we're doing something that's a time for money trade where we're doing it for a paycheck. But I think when you're in a place where you're actually in a place where you're freed up to, oh, I have time now, and really, what is my purpose? And I think if you don't have a purpose and you don't have a vision for your life, I think in a way we're kind of dying inside. So I think that's the most important thing, is to have that purpose, and that can be discovered, that can be learned. There's assessments to do that. There's books, there's spirituality, lots of
Right.
different things. But I think that for me, once I realized, okay, there's another way to do this, I learned about investing and I got financially free. And then I've helped, many people now. I've had over 2,500 one-on-one phone calls with investors to talk about investing in different opportunities that are out there. And it's been great. And we've had some things go phenomenally well. We've had some challenges and things with real estate. A couple of years, where rates have been higher, but we've shifted into other cash flow type of investments. So, even me, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm continuing to find new ways and better ways to do it.
As you're talking about the time, how important it is, I've had like some health issues, right? I've had cancer several times.
Oh, so
Like that's when I'm like, okay, time is limited. Is how I see it, and you got to enjoy and create those memories with your family, like you're doing these trips, and you're able to do the investing to help you support that, right? And
yeah.
we just gotta find a way to adapt. That's kind of really what it is.
That's it. Yeah. And I think, life offers us, I think there's this idea that, people feel like life is happening to them. And I think really life happens for us. We've got to really reframe it that, hey, we're actually here, and, everything in our life, there's got to be a central purpose there. I have a faith in God that I feel like, hey, everything's working together somehow for my good. And I think without that, it's very difficult, because difficult things happen. If there's no reason, there's no purpose, there's no learning, then what's the point? Right. So I just have to look at, even if I don't see it, that somehow this is happening to me, or excuse me, it's happening for me, so that I can become a better person, and I can have, continue to move toward becoming a better, making the difference in the world that I want to make, being that person that I want to be in the world. So I think that those are all things that a lot of times we miss in the moment. There's always a silver lining, and we can often miss it very easily. And
Right.
so I think it's just so important to continue to look forward to that.
Right. You're wanting to be a good role model for everybody because I'm sure you've heard the walk the talk, not just talk the talk, you're walking the talk. Is
Yeah.
that, I mean, sure, you're familiar with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, yeah, there's a breakdown. A lot of people will say that they believe something, and then when it comes down to it, they don't actually carry it out, right? And so I think that for all of us, I think there's an opportunity to live more authentically, to lean into discomfort, and to tell the story. I mean, if you've been through cancer a few times, like I'm sure it was incredibly challenging. And my uncle went through terminal cancer, and it's like he just came up with this idea of like, wow, he just has this wonder for life now. He just sits around and is just amazed
Yes.
by things in life, and just literally enters in. He actually wrote a book called Bonus Time, and it was the idea that, like, almost like in sports, you have this bonus time, but you don't know, like in soccer, you don't know when it's going to end, right? And so, but he said the difference is he knows he's in bonus time, but most people don't know they're in bonus time, right? So we're all in bonus time. Everything today is a gift. It's just that for some of us that have been through extremely challenging or life-threatening things, you're in bonus time, right? You know that you're like, hey,
Right.
this is all a gift.
I kind of compare the two, like having a health issue and then a financial issue, right? They're kind of, in a way, I should say similar, but it could be traumatic, and you have to find a way to approach that setback, right? So how would you, based on your experience, what feedback would you give somebody if they're dealing with something health issue or related to financial? It's kind of similar.
Yeah, yeah, it is similar. I think that for all of us, again, we have to come back and say that, okay, somehow I don't understand why this is happening. I think faith and spirituality is a huge part of it. I think having a sense that, God is with me and for me, and he's not, just punishing me. He's actually, somehow there's something good happening here. And I think I have a belief that I think God, and I don't know how you can talk about this without talking about faith and without God, because I think it's so tied in. But I think that, we go through challenges, and I do think that, there's got to be some sort of plan there and a preparation that this is happening to really grow our character. And I think God is more concerned about our character than our comfort. Like, I would always choose comfort. I always want to have, health and a good thing, whatever. There's things I pray for. But there's a quote by, I think it's John F. Kennedy, and he said something: don't pray that your lives would be easier, pray that you'd be better men or be stronger men. Like, just the kind of idea, like, wow, like that really is like, okay, let's not just pray life gets easier. Let's actually lean into what actually makes us better people. Right. And so I think that sometimes, again, if you have that view, I've seen people really thrive through challenges, like yourself, going through serious health challenges and other things. And so I think that, you have to come back and say, okay, this is going to be used for something somehow. I'm going to have a story here. I'm going to have some sort of, report testimony or whatever. And I just believe, spirituality, it's like it doesn't end when you die, right? There's a future, plan, and there's, depending what somebody's faith looks like. But I think that you got to see that, hey, there's greater purpose working here than just how does it turn out right now. And I've had to do that actually with things that fail, because I've had business deals fail, like literally, like we've lost money from investors. That's a really hard thing, family members, investors, and that's hard to bounce back from, right? But I've had to say, well, did I learn something? Did I learn something here that's going to prevent me from losing money in the future, or it's going to give me something that's going to help me to move in the future? Because if I didn't learn anything, I'm just going to repeat it, right? And so it's easier to, when I want life to be easy and to just kind of go smoothly and everything to go well, every investment to go well. But sometimes investments don't go well. Sometimes your finance, you do take a hit. The stock market goes down, or a deal doesn't work out, or something happens, or even in your health. But I think in the middle of it, it's just that, hey, I'm learning, I'm growing. And if I could just keep learning these lessons, I'll keep getting better and better.
That is so true. As you were talking about the stock market, it's always been that way. It just, and to me, you have to look at the long-term picture, not just short-term, especially in finance. I'm assuming you agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you're short term, I mean, there's the whole idea. There's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it just talks about the idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, right? So if I have a fixed mindset and something fails, well, that means I'm a failure, right? Because I failed at something. But when you have a growth mindset, you say, well, nothing. Well, I'm not a failure. This is just information. Okay, this thing didn't work. I mean, as an entrepreneur now, or in life or business, you're going to have things that, like, I tried many things, and many of those things don't work, right? But then there's a few things that do work, and I double down on those. So I have to kind of remove the identity part of it, right? That's not me. That's just what happened, right? Or even if it was something that I did, it doesn't mean, like, I can learn, I can do it different next time. So I think a lot of times as kids, we think that way. It's like, oh, this happens, therefore it's not going to work. And so I think it's just so important to reframe something when you go through it, and then realize, when I look back on my life, the times of highest growth and learning happened in the most difficult times of my life, right? So I went through a divorce a number of years ago. Like I said, I've had some business challenges at times. I've had years ago, I got fired from a job. Like, I mean, there's just things you go through, but those are things that I really learned and grew so much from.
I like that. You have to step back and look at them. What did you learn? Take that perspective, because you're not a failure. I've been laid off too unexpectedly. Especially I was in the corporate world, and that's when I decided I'm just going to be myself and help people that want my help. Excuse me, not need, but maybe both, right? Want and need.
Yeah, right.
But you just have to embrace life the best you can. I love the analogy that you were saying, that it is spirituality involved in it, and I think your mindset is critical. And I think you should also ask for help, not isolate yourself. I'm sure you've reached out to friends to get some advice.
Yeah, yeah. There's a saying. I mean, I think the biggest way to change your life, there's a quote I love. It says, "You'll be the same person 5 years from now, except for the books you read and the people that you meet." You've probably heard that quote before, but it's really, it's two things, right? It's the education, which is great shows like this. It's reading books. It's getting into educational learning and just having kind of that growth mindset of learning. And then it's really the networking piece of who are you going to meet, who are you going to get around. There's also another quote that says you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with, right? And it's almost true about every area of your life. So if you're like, I'm really not in good physical shape, well, I just joined a fitness challenge this week where it's like, I'm going to, for the next 3 or 4 months, I'm going to be hanging out with a bunch of people in really great shape, right? Because I made a decision to do that. And so it's in any area, if I want to change, if I want to grow my wealth, and this is one of the biggest kind of whisper codes for wealth and the secrets for wealth, is you've got to get around people that are more wealthy than you. Because, like, for example, when I was wanting to leave my regular job, I was making over $200,000 a year. My whole family, they're a bunch of teachers. They're wonderful people, but a bunch of teachers and other kind of more traditional, nonprofit, other things like that. And so they, oh my gosh, why would you leave your great job? Don't do, the golden handcuffs. Why would you do that? But then I got in a room full of entrepreneurs that are more successful than I was. And they basically listened to my story for about an hour, and I kind of walked through everything, how I made money. And they're like, every single one of them said, you should leave your job pretty much as soon as possible. And if it doesn't work, you could always go back to medical sales. And I was like, oh, I could always go back. Like, it kind of reframed it for me. So I think sometimes there's things that people that are in the position you want to be in, they'll think very differently. And if you're open to it, they will be great mentors for you.
I like that. And it's sort of similar to kind of what I experienced, but I dealt with a startup in the industry, and I was chastised for quitting, for going there, but became very successful, right? And then I moved on to do something else. But this guy that started it, he's a billionaire now.
Wow.
And that hilarious, I shouldn't say hilarious, but he's now in helping um, research for like cancer because his wife ended up having cancer like me later. So you just don't know. And I think he's using his wealth to help other people now, right? And I mean, it's just the right thing to do. And you have to be open to taking risk. I think you need to be curious. It sounds like you're very curious. I am not risk averse, but I am in some ways. It just depends on what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, some of the people I admire the most, I have a friend who's in his mid 80s and just, you know, extremely successful, super high net worth. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And he is one of the most curious people. And he'll just ask questions and he'll just sit and he'll just want to know. And I think that's like, I can't remember, I think it was Socrates or Aristotle. One of them would just go around and be, I don't know anything. What do you know? And you just kind of like, when you can just learn so much if you just have this idea where you're open to what people
Yes.
have to say. And so the opposite of that is, and I think as we age, like I've watched people that, they get older and they get in their 80s or, 70s, and the biggest problem is the neighbors. The neighbors are doing this and the gardeners this and whatever. It's like our world becomes very small. We really have to fight to continue to have a bigger vision and really expand and be open that, there's a lot out there. If I'm curious, if I'm open, if I'm just willing to be, kind of have conversations with people, you're going to learn a lot. And I think that's where life is really exciting when you're willing to stay in that kind of the childlike kind of curiosity that is so healthy.
I like that. We are very more similar than I realized. I do. I'm like a child sometimes and I'm not afraid of certain things, but I am on others. So just depends on what it is. But I think the money thing you're talking about is just it really truly is critical in our day and age. And I just want to make sure people are open to like reading your book, for example, by yourself, because they're probably going to learn a lot from that because you're sharing your experience. And I think that's why I like talking to authors because your books are so informative. And I agree with you, watching the news, I don't do that just because it's just for the moment. And all it does is stress people out. And I try not to stress about something I have no control over.
Yeah.
You want to have an impact in a certain way on certain things. uh, and that is being part of a community, right? And that's what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the older I get, the more I realize time is short. There's a phenomenon that as we get older, the time goes by quicker, and I find myself that and
True.
it didn't. It's funny. My daughter's 12, and so it's just like everything seems to take so long. And I remember that as a kid, like I just felt like, oh, I'm so far away from Christmas, so far away from school getting out, and so far away from all the thing at my birthday or whatever. And those are things that mattered at the time. But as you get older, you're kind of like, oh, I wish I could kind of go back to like age 22 or 25, or as a kid, where it's just. But over time, it's just things have this illusion of just speeding up, and I think it's because we hopefully get into things that are more interesting. We're doing things that we value, but then again, it's so important to take those moments, and I think just live out of a place of gratitude and just really be grateful for the things that we have because that'll have just so many positive impacts on your outlook, your health, your different things that you're approaching, and it really allows us to really savor the moments because life is really just a collection of these memories that we put together, and whatever we are able to take from that and really give to the world, I think that really makes a significant life.
I like that you have a lot of wisdom, and I could tell you read a lot. Which,
I'm a nerd. We do read a
yeah,
lot.
I love that. I think that's awesome. So I know you got another call coming up, Bronson. So where can people reach out to you or learn more about you?
Yeah, so I've got a free gift for your audience if you like. I think one of the biggest issues we're facing right now is inflation. And so I wrote this guide on how to use inflation to your advantage. So instead of just feeling the pain of inflation at the pump or at the store and grocery store, you can actually benefit from it through things like real estate, precious metals, borrowing. There's just some unique strategies. So people text the word inflation to the number 33777. The word inflation to the number 33777. That'll send that free guide to you. It'll ask for your email and your name, and then it'll basically put you in touch with kind of our future offerings and deals and things that we're working on an educational side as well. But it's really been really great to be here. I really appreciate the time, Bridget.
Oh, no problem. And those that are listening, I'll include the link that Bronson mentioned in the description. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you again for your time, Bronson.
Thanks so much. This is great.